For a large portion of people with thyroid symptoms, they've never had their thyroid antibodies checked. And for those who have, they often don't know how they should track these levels or if they're even important due to poor communication from their doctor. In today's video, we are going to talk about thyroid antibodies, what they are, if our goal should always be getting them as low as possible, and also some strategies to help you out in this area. If you're new to my channel, welcome, and if you've been here before, thanks for joining me again. Just a quick reminder, if you like these kinds of videos, make sure to click the subscribe button and also ring the bell. That way you're notified when I post new content every Thursday morning. My name is Dr. Bodle, and I specialize in helping women with Hashimoto's and low thyroid to lose weight and improve their energy naturally. And a big piece of doing so is making sure that we understand thyroid antibodies. So let's start off today by first defining what antibodies are. Antibodies are proteins produced by our immune cells that allows us to identify and help rid the body of infectious threats. When they are used in that capacity, defending us from outside invaders, they are normal, healthy, and necessary for life. However, for people with autoimmunity, instead of creating antibodies for an infectious threat, due to immune system dysregulation, we have now created antibodies for our own tissues and glands. And if you want to know exactly how this process works and the different stages of autoimmunity, you can always check out the video that I made on this exact topic, and I'll make sure to link that for you right up here. But to put it simply, once the antibodies that match to the thyroid gland have been developed, our immune system is going to treat the thyroid gland as a foreign invader. And whenever there's a flare-up in immune system activity, it is going to damage and destroy the thyroid gland, leading to a decrease in thyroid hormone output and also an increase in the symptoms that you experience. These thyroid antibodies, which include TPO antibodies and thyroglobulin antibodies, are the hallmark or the diagnostic criteria for Hashimoto's disease. They can be positive for years prior to any changes in TSH levels and often contribute to symptoms during that time. The frustrating thing is that these antibodies can be easily checked on a blood lab, but most doctors don't do it because so many treatments focus solely on thyroid hormone replacement and ignore the fact that we need to do things to help support our immune system function. So if positive antibodies are indicative of Hashimoto's and negative antibodies helps us to rule out the condition, it would make sense that most of us would try to get these antibody levels as low as possible. But there's a couple things that we have to first consider. First, antibodies are only one aspect of the immune response. And due to individual variability in how the rest of our immune system reacts, higher antibodies do not always correlate with an increase in symptoms. For example, I've had some patients with TPO antibodies measure at 36, which is just above the reference range, and they've been completely falling apart. On the other hand, I've had patients with TPO antibodies in the thousands, and although they might not feel their best, they're able to manage and get through their day. What this means is reducing your antibodies is likely preferable, but don't compare yourself to other people. Instead, use your own baseline measurements as a reference point to compare to. And when we look at the research, people who have TPO antibodies that are under 500 IUs per milliliter are no more likely to progress to hypothyroidism than someone who is under 100 IUs per milliliter. Now, that's not to say that people under that threshold can't still be dealing with symptoms. What my point is if you've measured your baseline numbers, made changes and seen improvements in how you feel, and you also are under that 500 IU per milliliter threshold, then you likely don't need to go to extreme lengths to further reduce your antibody levels. This is one of those situations where we really need to listen to our body and pay attention to how we function, especially if we're feeling good. We don't want to be over concerned with lab values if the research doesn't bear out long-term risk for progression of the condition. In summary, it's a good goal to reduce your antibodies from where they were at when you were originally diagnosed, but getting them as low as possible likely isn't necessary for you to be able to see improvements in your health and feel your best. But if we want to reduce our antibodies and therefore improve our thyroid symptoms, what are our options? Well, our first category is doing things that directly support immune system function and tolerance. Well, there's a number of nutritional compounds that have been shown to help out with thyroid autoimmunity, things like CoQ10, curcumin, omega-3 fatty acids, and glutathione. One of my favorites is vitamin D. The research is very strong that low vitamin D levels can correlate with increased autoimmune activity. And if you're someone who has been previously diagnosed with Hashimoto's, then you want to make sure that you're also getting your vitamin D levels checked. Personally, I like to use liquid vitamin D whenever possible. It seems to be absorbed better and it's easier to take higher amounts. And I usually recommend 6 to 12,000 IUs per day for about 2 months to help people restore normal levels. Once they've done that, they can usually take 1 to 3,000 IUs per day to be able to maintain it. Next is selenium. And while selenium is a key micronutrient for thyroid function, and some studies have shown that selenium supplementation can reduce thyroid autoimmunity, the results overall have been mixed. I typically don't recommend selenium to my patients as I tend to find other strategies are more valuable, and most people don't notice a big change in how they feel when they're taking selenium. Plus, we don't want to be doing a million things all at one time. But if you've taken selenium before and you noticed that it did help you feel better, I would love it if you could leave me a comment and kind of describe what that process looked like. Usually taking 200 micrograms per day for 3 to 6 months is warranted, and it also tends to be very safe for most people. Our third way to support and improve thyroid antibody levels is to use caution with iodine. Now, a lot of natural practitioners out there, instead of using thyroid hormone replacement, will recommend iodine. And while it's true that iodine is a key factor for the development and production of thyroid hormone, there is a lot of compelling research that shows that increased iodine levels puts you at increased risk of developing Hashimoto's. While we certainly don't want to be iodine deficient either, iodine is one of the micronutrients that our body can sequester, so we don't have to take it in every single day. However, what I tend to see is that people are taking it every single day, and often in amounts that far exceed the recommendations and puts us into that risk category for the development of thyroid autoimmunity. Not only has the research shown that increased iodine levels can be problematic, but it's also shown that low iodine diets can be beneficial. What I usually recommend is that people avoid iodized salt. They avoid products like kelp and seaweed extracts that can often have huge amounts of iodine in them, and also be mindful of any supplements, especially multivitamins, that you might be taking. If you do think you need iodine, make sure you're working closely with your practitioner, monitor your TSH and thyroid antibody levels, and don't take any more than 200 micrograms per day. With that all said, I would really recommend using caution in terms of taking iodine, especially in the beginning. I can't tell you the number of times that I've started working with a patient who's been diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and as we dig into their health history, we realize that taking iodine is one of the key triggers that has perpetuated some of their symptoms. In general, I don't use iodine with my patients, and we're still able to get really great results. Lastly, one of the best and most effective ways to support our immune system and our thyroid is to support our gut function via diet and supplemental strategies. I recommend adopting a gluten-free and dairy-free whole foods diet in conjunction with supplements like digestive enzymes, probiotics, and potentially herbal antimicrobials. Some people may need to be more restrictive with their food, and for those people, I recommend a paleo or an autoimmune paleo style diet. Now, the research doesn't indicate that these diets are necessarily better for us at reducing thyroid antibodies, and they may not be necessary for everyone. However, I do think it's important to figure out where your individual tolerance is and where your gut health is at. That way you can apply the appropriate diet for your needs. If you're someone who only has mild digestive symptoms and notices reactions to just a few foods, then you can likely be more relaxed with your dietary approach. However, if you tend to react to everything and it's hard to determine specifically which foods are causing your problem, then you're going to need to be more restrictive. But if you want to know more about this topic, you can always check out my video, which is what is the best diet for Hashimoto's, where I really dive into the details of these kinds of approaches. So to quickly recap, Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition that is defined by the presence of TPO antibodies, thyroglobulin antibodies, or both. Antibodies are proteins made by the immune system that usually help us to defend our body from infection. But in the case of Hashimoto's, we've developed these antibodies for our thyroid gland, and whenever our immune system flares up, it can damage the thyroid gland, impair its function, and lead to symptoms. In general, it's a good goal to try to reduce our thyroid antibodies. However, we don't want to compare ourselves to other people, and instead we should look at the number when we were diagnosed. If we see a reduction in that number, then that's a good indicator that we are making progress. The best way to support reductions in thyroid antibodies is to do things like support our immune system via compounds like vitamin D, make sure we have appropriate levels of selenium, avoid iodine if our system is very sensitive, and also improve our gut health through diet, lifestyle, and supplemental changes. If you liked today's video but are looking to take your health to the next level, then send me an email at contact@seattlethyroidhelp.com to see if you qualify for a free one-on-one consultation with me. I've helped thousands of patients with thyroid-related symptoms get back to feeling like their old self and living their life again. But each situation is unique, and we always want to make sure that we take the time to determine if we're a good fit to work together and that our goals align. If you're not currently ready for a consultation, you can always reach out in the future. But if you'd like some things to work on at home right now, make sure to grab my guide from the link in the description box below, which is 109 foods to boost your thyroid and improve your energy. It's a list of foods that I use with my patients every single day, and it includes the ones that I recommend and don't recommend for people starting out and supporting their thyroid health. But thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend, and if you have any questions, leave them for me in the comments box below or come say hi on social media. I hope you're having an amazing week. I care about you guys, and I hope that you're having all the success that you deserve. My name is Dr. Bodle, and I'll see you guys next Thursday.